well, I don't know, it might give them some fulfillment in their life. I'm not sure. But I think the fact is I just felt my life was so empty. It wasn't, my father was somebody who believed in, work was very important to him.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you worked and you had a job, he certainly made sure that we went to work, every day. And that's never left me. But work or things that I was involved in that I enjoyed doing and so on, they never seemed to give me that kind of any sense of fulfillment. So I felt my life was really empty. It wasn't the fact it was dull, it was just empty. And I think because of things that had happened to me in my life when I was younger, because I felt, lots of things that do affect us, and we carry things, we carry so much baggage sometimes. And I was carrying a lot of baggage. And even though I was carrying all that stuff, I still felt my life was kind of a bit purposeless and empty. And I knew there must be something more to life than this.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see it in sex. I didn't see it in smoking, in taking drugs or all that stuff, alcohol, all those kind of things. We either touch them or we don't touch them. They affect our life or they don't affect our life. But none of those things ever seemed to give me any sense of a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
As I was looking, I was actually searching, and I felt my life was so empty that I couldn't go through life. I had one brother who committed suicide when he was 21, and I thought his life, if he felt like me, I could understand why that happened to him, really. But my life, I just needed something to fill my life, and I didn't find it until I actually came to that point where I realized that Jesus wanted to fill it.
Excellent. Now, you said, of course, when you were born, the nurse had an accident and didn't turn up, but the ladies next door helped out. And you said that they dedicated you to the Lord.
Yes.
Do you think that had any particular effect on your decision to follow Jesus, or in any way?
Well, I think looking back, at the time, I never gave that. I didn't even know that until I'd come to know the Lord. But when I look back and think about it, I think there are certain things from that point in my life that could have been. Things were pretty bad from time to time, but I think it would have been a lot worse if that hadn't have happened. And I think that God, at that moment, I'm sure he kind of was, waiting, and I'm sure they'd be praying that I'd come to a point in my life where I'd kind of be able to discern that God was trying to speak to me and get through to me. Mm-hmm. And the only opportunity I had for that to happen seemed to be, to me, was that night when I was invited to that particular meeting,
Excellent. Now, you mentioned a little bit about your childhood. Some parts were traumatic, and has that had any effect on your life?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they leave scars on us. I think, in fact, something came up. I was reminded of it very significantly, quite recently, really, when somebody died, and I went to actually visit them, and I saw this picture on the photograph on the sideboard, only to realize that the husband, this lady who now is well into her 90s, the husband of this lady was the person who'd actually abused me.
Wow. How did that make you feel when you saw that?
Well, I felt at that moment I was quite. I tried. This lady's quite frail, and I'm quite a compassionate person, and I prayed for this lady, and it's not nothing to do with her. Well, before she met him, I'm sure, but or it may not have been, I don't know. But I felt that at the time it shocked me. I was shocked to see him because it took me right back. It took me right back to the place where it happened, when it happened, how it happened, what he did, all the stuff at that moment. Then it's amazing how the enemy, can use it and kind of try and get us traumatized again. So these things are there, and even though God has kind of, it's never held me back in that sense, I felt only recently, over the last few months, I've had the real definite possibility of dealing with it, really dealing with it in a spiritual way.
Excellent. Now, you said, of course, you left school at a very young age with very few qualifications. You've told us about everything you've done for the gospel, preaching all over the world. Have you ever had a real job?
Well, when I left school, a real job. Yeah, I've been asked that question a few times. Yeah, when I left school, my dad took me. I was 14, a month before my 50th birthday, and my father took me to the Parks and Cemeteries department at Hindley. He knocked on the superintendent's door, who lived in the house in the cemetery. And he said to the superintendent, because he knew one interest that I had was my grandfather was a very good gardener. And I love gardening. I love being with him when I had the opportunity. So he knocked on the door and he said, could you give my son a job? And at that time, I don't know what it was. There seemed to be lots of jobs going around. I don't know. The only offer I had of a job apart from that was when we had a visit down to the mine shaft. They took us down the mine shaft. And when I came back up, I said to my father, I said, Dad, there's one thing I don't want to do, that's go down there again. So he knew I didn't want to do that, but he knocked on this door and the superintendent said, oh, well, come in, I'll give you an interview now. And he was still in his dressing gown. And he interviewed me. And the only one question he ever asked me that I can remember is this one. He said, are you good to your mother? And my father was there. And I knew I'd got a slap around the head if I'd have said anything different, but I said the wrong thing. But I said, well, yeah, I think I am, which I've tried to be, and he said, all right, then you can start on Monday. And so on Monday morning I started, I became an apprentice gardener. And he put me with two older gardeners, and I was there for 3 years in the parks. And after 3 years, government reorganisation took place, and I got a job, a promotion really, into landscape design. Wow. And I went into a landscape design office, and I've been involved in landscape design all my life since, because I love horticulture, I love gardening, and I love landscape design. Now, and so I did that.
Did you see any funny sights or any funny situations happen to you while you were a gardener at the parks?
Oh, yeah, because the parks department, of course, is also responsible, particularly in bad weather and winter time, are responsible for digging graves. Okay. So I didn't realise that, even the apprentices. So we were shipped up to the cemetery on Castle Hill in Hindley, and we had to dig this particular grave. And so, unbeknownst to me, they hadn't told me this, but this was the first time I'd ever done it. And I wasn't 6 stone, dripping wet, with my clothes on. I was very thin and not very heavy. And so I was digging away at this grave. We dug down to the grave and we got down, and he tapped down the fella that I was with, and he says, oh yeah,
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all.
we're near Mr. Roberts now. He said, he's under there. He's not too far, only about 3 inches further down. He said, you stay there a minute. So he climbed out then with a ladder, this wooden ladder, and he climbed out. And he said, just tidy around the sides a bit. So I was busy tidying around the sides. Well, he pulled the ladder up. And at that time, they had corrugated sheeting. And they put the corrugated sheeting over the grave, over the hole. And I was the only one in this grave then. I was in this grave, and they left me there for 2 hours in this grave. I didn't hear anybody. I didn't think of anybody. The only person I thought about was Mr. Roberts underneath my feet, you know. And at this time, I didn't know the Lord. So I thought to myself, surely this, you know, I've got to get out of this. There's got to be more in life than a grave. So I've always thought that there's got to be more in life than facing a grave at the end of it. You know, I'm not looking forward to facing just that. Thank God we've not got that to face at the end, or I believe, you know, we've got a greater future than that. But that's one funny thing that happened as well. Did
you not even call out when you were in the grave, or did you just sit down and wait for the guys to come back?
I was shouting pretty loud, I can tell you. Yeah, I call out. I did shout out, yeah. And although I didn't swear, because every time I used to swear, my father used to clop me across the ear also. He used to blaspheme, my father, and my mother used to swear. But if he heard us swear, we get you know, a right good hand across our face or whatever. So I was always brought up not to swear. And I didn't tell you the opportunity, just quickly, when my brother died at 21, and at that time I was in the church and so on, and my mother had been coming to the church with my brother, and she'd made a bit of a decision. She knew
Wow.
She knew Jesus a little bit, and my father was so hard and so bitter. The first thing he did when I had to go and identify my brother's body, and I had to go and tell my parents that it was Christopher, and I had to do all those things. And when I told my father, the first thing he did was go to the whiskey bottle, and for the next week he was in the whiskey. He was on the whiskey all day, every hour. He couldn't cope with the fact, you know, he'd lost one of his sons and so on. And anyway, eventually after the funeral, he came to the funeral. And I asked him to come to a particular meeting, special meeting we're having over the weekend. I said, I've done all that. He said, thank you for all that you've done, son. I said, well, you know, the greatest thing I want you to do, Dad, he says, will you come to church with me? And he said, yeah, I will. And he was a very hard man at that time. And he came to church. And while I was on the platform, the preacher shared his message. He'd given an appeal. And during his words of his appeal, the Holy Spirit said to me, go down to your father now, ask him to get down on his knees with you and ask Jesus into his heart. And, you know, for me, as his son, that was one of the hardest things I think I've ever had to do, to come off where I was, to go down literally to my father and to say to him, and all this stuff was going on round about. And you know something? When I said that to him, he said, I will. And he got down on his knees, and I got down on my knees, and I led my father to the Lord.
Praise
that
God.
Was one of the greatest moments. I saw him baptized in water, and he's now in heaven with my mother. But that was a wonderful thing. Yeah.
Now you said
I know that's gone on a bit.
That's brilliant, that is, yeah. Now you got saved, and you said that God called you to preach. You went to the pastor, and he kind of gave you the heave-ho, so to speak, put you back a bit. Did that frustrate you to start with? Yeah,
I thought that's a shock. I didn't really expect that response. I thought, you're a man of God, you shouldn't say things like that. I thought he should be opening, you know, his arms wide open to you know, and a lot of people might know, they'll know who I'm talking about, you know. He didn't suffer fools gladly, you know. He knew what he was doing, and I suppose he was just testing how serious I really was. And you know, it was he said 3 months. I thought that's 3 months. It was you may well have said 3 years to me, because I was so eager. And to be perfectly honest, there wasn't a night, there wasn't a time. I hadn't got any more time, I didn't think, that I had got to give, apart from I was working full time then as well. So apart from putting that at one side. There wasn't anything else I could do because I was busy doing things, I thought, for Jesus, doing things that I could. And God asked me to do this. I thought, this is, and so anyway, out of that frustration, out of determination, that I wasn't going to let it go. And the first thing I thought he's going to ask me to do is, he's going to teach me the things in the Bible. He's going to get me some books from the Bible and people. I thought it's going to be wonderful. And the first thing he said to me was the worst possible thing he could have said to me at that moment. He said, well, what I want you to do, first of all, he said, I'm going to put you on a course at the local college. He said, and he put me on a course, a business studies course, to learn about mathematics, arithmetic, mathematics, English, to learn how to use a typewriter at that time, because computers weren't in at all, and to do some bookkeeping and to learn some things about geography. And I thought, why is he asking me to do these things? I want to preach the gospel, I want to learn how to preach the gospel. And for 3 years, alongside of him, as well as learning things from the Bible, I went along to the local college. And that 3 years was my education started to when it was, at that moment, because I never learned. I have to be perfectly honest. At school, I was pretty hopeless. I know people might say that, but if you know me and you saw my reports, you would know that. And to think now, that I've been in churches where I've needed to know about business, I've needed to know about accounts, I've needed to know about geography, I've needed to know about mathematics and arithmetic and accounting. I thought, that man had more wisdom. He had a wonderful wisdom to put those things in me, because if he hadn't have done that, there was no way I had the desire to do that. But he made me do that for 3 years, as well as coming alongside doing the Bible studies and other stuff, learning the Bible. And am I so glad that he did?
Yeah, because you did say that when most of your reports at school said could do better. So how much better can you do than following Jesus?
How much better?
Yeah.
Well,
or can you?
I don't know where it's better, but I think there's sometimes, I find more so in my life, what's happened is that there's come a realization that there's more space could become available in my life. There's so much stuff we carry with us. There's things we carry with us. If we carry some bitterness with us, or we fell out with someone, and the Bible teaches quite clearly to get those things put right. But if we carry those things through life, it's taking up space in our hearts and lives, I think, that God wants to use. And sometimes we've got to get rid of those things, and open ourselves up and say, God, fill that part of my life, get rid of stuff. And I think that's a wonderful thing about God's deliverance and things in our hearts. He delivers us of things that he might possess us with other things. And that's what he's done with me.
Now, you said God called you, God spoke to you about the school and many, many other things.
He's coming. Jesus is
Life Stories.
How do you know, or how can you tell when God's spoken to you?
Well, I think that I've been asked this question lots of times. People in church, they say, how do I know God's talking to me, and so on? How do I know that God is it's God that's saying this, or whatever? I can honestly say that the most times when God has actually said something to me, it's come into my spirit, it's come into my heart, And very often I've said to God, well, God, if this is right, if I'm not going, I hope it's not, the cheese I had last night, or the dream I had that I wished I was in, or whatever. If it is a reality, and I believe, I mean, it's so significant that you know in your knower, as one preacher used to say. Do you know in your knower? And that knower, that internal knower that we have as believers, when we have it there, we know that God's spoken to us. But I believe sometimes it's right for us to say, right, Lord, I want you to actually give me some kind of help and support with the fact of determining that this is really, really from you, and that's why I knocked on that head teacher's door, really, about the school. I thought, I've got to find, I mean, it's no good me just walking past the school and saying, I feel the Holy Spirit's just said to me, do you want this school? I thought, I mean, have I just dreamed that up or what? I used to walk past it and think, yeah, I'll make a great community space. I thought, right, the way I've got to deal with this is get some kind of get some more witness to this feeling that I've got, this word. So I knocked on their teacher's door. It was the only thing I thought I could do. He's the only one that would know. He was the one who leads his school. If the school's not going to close down or whatever, I'm thinking about something, it might be down the road, long years ago off or whatever. But I knocked on his door and God confirmed at that moment and said, yeah, you're absolutely right. The Holy Spirit did say to you as you walk past, do you want this school? It's on offer, and I'm placing it on offer for you.
Excellent. Well, you've done many, many things around the world. You talked about miracles in Grimsby. You talked about Indonesia. And you told us how you come through the coma as well. But when you said that not so long ago you had kidney failure, did you ever think to yourself, why me, Lord? Or why has this happened to me? Have you ever thought that?
Well, actually, the only thing I did think, I mean, this is honestly now, this is the honest thing now. The only thing I did think is the fact I thought, well, is this you saying, Lord, this is me, this is my time? And I thought, well, if it is my time, why do I have to sit here and be, why can't I just take me now, Lord? I'm quite happy to. I mean, I know my life is secure in you. I mean, I've got four beautiful grandchildren, and I'm very much a family man, and I love my family, and my wife, but I thought I only had those feelings. I didn't really think, why me? But I did feel, Lord, is this you saying to me, this is the end kind of thing of this journey? But in some ways, when I thought about it, I thought, no, this is not how I envisage that life is going to end for me. I feel that God's still got some reason for me to be here.
Yeah. Now, I was thinking as well, of course, it was that fateful day, that Saturday, when you went for your haircut.
Yeah.
The hairdresser was closed. So a lot of men on here, of course, might be asking themselves now, how do you keep your hair so nice at your age?
Oh, dear me. I don't know about that, but honestly, I don't know. But my hair was real short over my shoulders when I walked into the first church meeting that night. I'd not managed to get it cut, you see. But at that time, that was part of the hairstyles then, So I've always had, even though my dad was fairly bald, and I nearly said my mother was, but my mother wasn't. She had a good head of her, my mother. She was quite a good, she had a good head of her,
Well, if you believe me, Joseph, I was about the same time as you. I had the same head of hair that you had as well, but look at me now.
Well, you know what they say, grass doesn't grow on a busy street.
Praise the Lord. Now, there's one question I ask all the people who do their story here on Life Stories, is, of all the decisions you have made in your life, what is the best decision you have ever made?
The best decision I ever made was that night in 1973. that New Year's Eve, the night when I gave my heart to Jesus.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's been fantastic speaking to you. I mean, we could talk to you forever because for a local lad, I said, you've done much traveling and you've really been lovely to listen to. Thank you so much for your story. And with that, I'm just going to hand it back to Alan.
Thanks, George. Thank you, Joseph, for answering those questions. It's been great having you here tonight. I've not seen you for quite a while. I've not been able to talk with you, but it's been great hearing your story. I've never heard your full story, and that's great to hear that tonight. So thank you so much, George. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Howard. A few messages on Facebook have come through. First of all, for you, George, 2 ladies asking if George is the Legend was back tonight. Marilyn and Olivia, so happy that you're back today.
Thank you.
We've been worried about you. And they said for you, Joseph, oh, what a beautiful story. It's right that they need to be fed and clothed and tell them about God.
Amen.
So it's great stories of your work. And then someone says, my heart was totally destroyed when I sighted on ship. Apostolic Church, small village, but needed to experience life. I felt the evil the first night, a small village from Wales. I stood my ground, had responses, good and bad. Seen tons that hurt me, but all the crew still in touch with me. Was a battle, but Jesus shone through. Another one says, you are nothing but God's miracle. How God bless you. How beyond, says, you are nothing but God's miracle. How beyond blessed you have been. And that is God keeping you alive to tell you to spread the gospel. And one question which you've already answered. What happened to your mum and dad? Well, you've already said they both came to the Lord and they're in heaven today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. So thanks so much. It's been great having you with us. So if you want any help, contact us on the hotline, +44 794 355 0287, or go to our website, LifeStoriesWorldwide.com. There you'll find the Salvation Prayer link, you find the Bible app, you find lots of information to help you. You can also find out how you can watch all the other previous stories that we've had on other Mondays for the last 2 years. So there's lots of things you can do if you go on there. And can I invite you to join us again next Monday, 8 o'clock UK time, for another life story on Life Stories Worldwide. Next Monday, we have Dougie March. Dougie March was brought up on the east end of Newcastle upon Tyne, or he says you learn to fight before you can write. And he served 7 years in prison for violence and was addicted to cocaine. He was part of a football hooligan gang who went around the country fighting and drinking. And he thought there must be more to life. Well, he'll share with you next week how he found the real answer. So please join us again next Monday. So thank you so much for being with us, all of you. May God bless you. May you know the peace of God which passes all understanding. And may you have the joy of Jesus in your heart. God bless you all.
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming. And when he comes,